Welcome to M2 Configurator training. The download file to install M2 Configurator can be found on DAC files. Please note to use caution, as any misuse of this utility could render your display inoperable. M2 Configurator, referred to as M2 Config, is a software utility that is used to configure M2 and M3 controllers, upload firmware to the controller, clear or reset the memory, along with defragmenting the controller memory, file transferring, and many other helpful options that can come in handy for troubleshooting. So let's get started. At the top, you will see the following: a File option, which allows us to open a file or exit out of M2 Config, an Edit, which allows the setup of M2, the Status allows for calibration of a display, and Network allows timeout, retry, and enable or disable keep connection live. Network allows the configuration of the connection of the display. View is a list of the tabs below that allow for connection, configuration, and navigation in M2 when connected to a controller. And lastly, we have the Help, which gives us information about M2 config version, support contact, and systems information. The next row shows the connection buttons. Notice a few are lit up and others are grayed out. Once connected, these few buttons will gray out and the others will light up. These three lit ones are the Discover, Configure Connection, and Connect. Let's configure a connection to see the other buttons light up by clicking on the cog wheel or navigating to Network and selecting Configure Connection. From here, you will need to know the communication type being used. We have Direct for serial connection, which will require COM port information. We have Modem, which is for the 56K dial-up modems, which require a phone number to be entered. And lastly, we have the TCP IP or Ethernet, which requires an IP or a DHCP name. The socket information default is port 3001 and is only changed in specific circumstances. The Discovery mode allows M2 Config to search for a controller on a TCP IP connection. This can be done by either selecting the blue D icon or navigating to Network and selecting Discover. Once setting the configuration up, you can select the Connect icon or select Connect under Network. Once M2 establishes the connection, we will be able to verify configuration, check and clear memory, upload firmware, update or adjust time, so let's continue. Initially, the connection mode will create the following error, which is gwt.dat. This is normal and can be ignored. If you do encounter other errors, it is important to note them, as it could mean an issue with the controller that will need further investigation or troubleshooting. Now we can see these other buttons light up. They include the Disconnect, the Refresh, the Reset, which allows you to do a soft reset or a memory clear and reset, the Defrag, a set time or date, and lastly the Upload, which is used to upload any configuration changes made to the controller. The Utility tabs can be used once connection to the display is established. These are the Configuration tab, used to set controller configuration, File Transfer tab, which allows for file transfer between the computer and the connected controller, the Firmware tab, which is used to update controller firmware, the Diagnostics tab, which will provide access to diagnostic logs kept by the controller, the Tools tab, which is used for clearing memory, defrag, setting time and date, test patterns, and a few other options. And lastly, the Status tab, which provides a glimpse at the controller settings. Now back to the Configuration Utility tab. This is where the configuration of the controller and display will be made. It is very important that these configurations are all correct. If the controller has an incorrect setting, it can cause visual and connection issues. For standard AF series controller configurations, you can find a KB article which will be noted in references at the end of this training. There are two folders located here. First, we have the display folder, which contains the display dimensions, time, temp, and logging. The other is the communication, which has the controller communication settings. This is where one would change an IP or port settings for the controller connection. We are going to wrap up this training by reviewing the Status tab. As mentioned previously, it provides a glimpse at the settings on the controller. It is important to note, when looking here, to check the firmware version, the time date, and the storage memory for fragmented memory. There is much more information displayed here that can be quickly referenced while troubleshooting, so take some time to review this for any unusual stats. There is also a MLC window that will show MLC information should the display be set up with an MLC. That concludes the video on M2 config.